Handa ka na bang magpabakuna? Narito ang mga paalala at hakbang na gagawin sa proseso ng pagbabakuna. Bago ang pagbabakuna, kinakailangan mo nang dumaan sa pre-vaccination screening. Kinakailangan kumuha muna ng medical clearance sa doktor ang mga kabilang sa special population tulad ng mga sumusunod. May autoimmune disease, may cancer, may HIV, sumasailalim sa transplant operation, kasalukuyang umiinom ng steroids, mga pasyenteng may taning na ang buhay dahil sa karamdaman o nakaratay na lang sa kama o bahay. Kapag ikaw ay nabigyan na ng medical clearance mula sa iyong doktor, narito ang mga dapat gawin bago ang araw ng iyong pagbabakuna. 1. Humingi ng schedule at lugar kung saan ka magpapabakuna sa iyong pinakamalapit na barangay health center. 2. Huwag kalimutan dali ng iyong government ID, proof of comorbidity o medical clearance, pati na ang face mask, face shield at hand sanitizer. Sa araw ng pagbabakuna, narito ang mga steps na dapat sundin. Step 1. Waiting area. Siguraduhin kayo ay pumunta sa tamang oras at petsa ng inyong schedule sa pagbabakuna. Hindi papayagan ang mga walk-in sa vaccination sites. Maupo sa bakanting upuan alinsunod sa tamang pagkakasunod na bilang. Hintayin na tawagin kayo para sa susunod na hakbang. Habang nag-aantay, sumunod sa minimum public health standards. Isuot ang face mask at face shield, sundin ang proper physical distancing at ugalihing maghugas at isanitize ang kamay. Step 2. Registration. Sundin ang mga patakaran ng inyong LGU o vaccination site sa pag-register at ipakita ang inyong government ID. Bibigyan kayo ng kopya ng informed consent form, health screening form at mga pamphlet tungkol sa bakuna na pwede ninyong basahin. Hintayin na matapos ang proseso ng registration bago pumunta sa susunod na hakbang. Step 3. Screening. Kayo ay isa sa ilalim sa health screening at tatanungin tungkol sa inyong kalusugan tulad ng history of COVID-19 exposure, history of vaccination, mga gamot na iniinom, kung may allergies at iba pa. Ito ay para makasiguro kung angkop para sa inyo ang magpabakuna sa kasalukuyan. Step 4. Health education. Makinig sa ibabahaging importanteng impormasyon tungkol sa pagbabakuna para sa COVID-19. Kung mayroon pa kayong ibang katanungan, sumangguni sa ating mga vaccination staff. Siguraduhin na pirmahan ang consent form na pumapayag kayong magpabakuna bago pumunta sa susunod na hakbang. Step 5. Vaccine Administration. Ito ang panahon kung saan kayo ay babakunahan sa loob ng 1 o 2 minuto. Huwag kalimutan na kunin ang inyong vaccination card pagkatapos matanggap ang bakuna. Step 6. Observation. Alinsunod sa Department of Health, ang lahat na magpapabakuna ay kailangan manatili sa pasilidad ng 15 hanggang 30 minuto para obserbahan kung may hindi magandang nararamdaman. Ang ating medical staff ay nakatutok sa inyo para ma-monitor ang inyong kalusugan. Bibigyan kayo ng mga pangalan ng health facility o hotline kung saan pwedeng pumunta kung kinakailangan sumangguni dahil sa side effects ng bakuna. Pagkatapos ng pagbabakuna, huwag kalimutang gawin ang mga sumusunod. 1. Itanong ang mga nais mong malaman tungkol sa vaccine na binigay sa'yo. 2. Huwag kalimutan ang iyong vaccination card. 3. Alamin ang petsa ng second dose ng iyong pagbabakuna. 4. Kunin ang contact number o alamin kung sino ang dapat tawagan kung sakali mang ikaw ay nakadarama ng seryosong side effects. Narito rin ang ibang mga paalala na dapat tandaan. Siguraduhin bumalik sa schedule para sa pangalawang dose ng bakuna. Laging tatandaan na kahit nabakunahan ka na, ay huwag pa rin kalimutan sumunod sa minimum public health standards tulad ng pagsasanitize ng mga kamay, pagsusuot ng face mask at face shield, at pagdistansya sa iba ng 1 metro. Magmask, hugas, iwas, airflow. Ito ay para na rin sa ating proteksyon at sa proteksyon ng iba. Narito ang pagkakasunod-sunod ng mga eligible population na target mabakunahan. Para sa karagdagang impormasyon, bisitahin ang mga sumusunod na pages. Facebook, Official DOH.gov. Twitter, @DOH.gov.ph. Website, doh.gov.ph. Tara na sa Bida Vaccination!
Sino ba ang hindi naapektuhan? Sino ba ang hindi nag-alala? Sino ba ang hindi nalito? Lahat tayo ay naapektuhan. Lahat tayo ay nag-aalala. Lahat tayo ay nalito. Dahil binago ng pandemyang dulot ng COVID-19 ang paraan ng pamumuhay ng lahat ng mga Pilipino saan mang sektor ka nabibilang. Tumigil ang panandalian ang ating mga nakagawian. Tumigil ang lahat ng uri ng transaksyon. Tumigil ang lahat ng operasyon ng mga paaralan. Nakalilito. Nakakaba. Paano na ang kinabukasan ng mga kabataan? Paano na tayo sa hinaharap? Opisyal na inilulunsad ng Kagawaran ng Edukasyon sa pangunguna ng Office of the Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction ang DepEd Teaches. Ito ay isang online na programa na gagabay sa mga guro, tagapangasiwa, magulang at mag-aaral hinggil sa mga pagbabago sa batayang edukasyon ngayong new normal. Ang DepEd Teaches ay angkla sa sulong edukalidad na nakatuon sa apat na pangunahing pangangailangan ng mapunyaging reforma tungo sa makalidad na pagtuturo at pagkatuto. Una, pagre-review at pagsasapanahon ng kurikulum ng K-12. Ikalawa, pagpapaunlad ng kapaligirang pampagkatuto. Ikatlo, paglinang ng mga bagong kasanayan sa mga guro. At ang ikaapat, ang pakikipag-ugnay sa mga stakeholder para sa suporta at kolaborasyon. Sa pamamagitan ng virtual learning platform, ang DepEd Teaches ang magsisilbing bukas na komunidad ng pagsasanay na titipon sa mga guro, tagapamunong pang-edukasyon at sa sinumang may pagnanais sa pagtataguyod ng kalidad na edukasyon sa bansa at sa pagtagumpay ng bawat Pilipinong mag-aaral. Ang mga opisyal, education specialist, learning content expert at outstanding teacher ng DepEd ang magiging tagapanayam na magbabahagi ng kanilang kaalaman at kasanayan sa kurikulum, pagtuturo at pagkatuto, pagtataya at lahat ng kaugnay na mahalaga sa proseso ng pagtuturo at pagkatuto sa new normal. Bilang mga frontliner ng classroom, inaasahang magiging aktibo ang mga guro sa programang ito. Ang mga tema at paksa ay angkop sa kanilang pangangailangan at konteksto sa pamamagitan ng accessible na platform, ang social media. Sumali na sa OUCI family sa DepEd Teaches, kung sama-sama mapahuhusay pa ang mga guro, kung sama-sama higit na malilinang natin ang mga mag-aaral.
Isang makawikang pagbati sa lahat ng masugid na taga-subaybay ng DepEd Teaches. Patuloy po tayong napapanood sa iba't ibang social media platforms tulad ng DepEd Philippines Facebook page, DepEd Tayo at DepEd YouTube channel. Sa pagkakataong ito, malugod namin na ipinahayag ang pakikiisa ng Kagawaran ng Edukasyon sa taunang pagdiriwang ng buwan ng wikang pambansa ngayong Agosto, alinsunod sa Pampanguluhang Proklamasyon bilang 1041, serye 1977. Kaya naman, samahan ninyo kami ni Binibining Ana na gamitin ang ating wikang Filipino sa ating programa sa araw na ito. Ito ay bilang pagbabandila sa pagpapahalaga sa ating wikang pambansa, gayon din sa mga katutubong wika ng Pilipinas na mahalagang kasangkapan sa unawaan, kaisahan at kaunlaran ng bansa.
Sang-ayon ako, Ginoong July. Gaya ng isinasaad sa tema nito na Filipino at mga wikang katutubo sa dekolonisasyon ng pag-iisip ng mga Pilipino, dapat itaguyod ang makapilipinong pananaw sa pagwawaksi ng pagtatangi o diskriminasyong pangwika at pangkultura sa bansa. Kaya sabay-sabay nating itanghal ang ating pagiging Pilipino sa paggamit at pagtangkilik sa ating sariling wika. Samantala, Samahan ninyo kami sa pagpapasinaya ng bagong serye ng mga panayam na sisimulan ngayong buwan ng Agosto hanggang Setyembre. Ito ay may temang Hindsight, Insight, and Foresight, Lessons and Ways Forward for the New Normal. Ibabahagi dito ang iba't ibang pananaw at perspektibo sa magkakaibang konteksto sa pagharap natin sa panahong ito ng bagong karaniwan. Pangunahin rito ang mga hamon sa patuloy na pagkakaloob ng makalidad na edukasyong panlahat. Ito ay magsisilbing pagpapamalas at pagpapaunawa ng pag-asa at paghikayat sa pagkakaisa sa pagtamo ng mithiing pambansang karunungan, kaligtasan at kaunlaran.
Sa makatuwid, Binibining Ana, sa mga naunang panayam natin, nagtuon tayo sa mahalagang aspekto ng pagtuturo at pagkatuto, gaya ng tunguhin ng kurikulum, instruksyonal na pagdidisenyo o instructional design, pedagohiya o pedagogy, pagtataya o assessment, at kagamitan panglinang. Ngayon naman, higit nating palalawigin ang pagtalakay sa teryeng ito sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng mga dagdag pang kaalaman at kabatiran hinggil sa mga posibleng hakbang at plano upang lalo pang mapaigting ang kampanya sa pagpapalakas at pagpapatatag ng edukasyon sa panahong ito ng pandemya. Gayon din upang mabisa at epektibong maisagawa ito tungo sa matagumpay na pagharap sa naglipanang mga hamon sa ating kapaligiran.
Napakahusay ng iyong pagkakalahad, Ginoong July. Kung papansinin, tunay na magkakaugnay ang magiging daloy ng ating mga panayam. Ito ay upang higit na maging malinaw at malalim ang pag-unawa sa mga pangunahing pagsaalang-alang sa pagtuturo at pagkatuto. At dahil nalalapit na ang pagbubukas muli ng klase, marapat na ihanda ang ating mga sarili, magsumikap tayo na lalo pang paghusaya ng ating mga pamamaraan at estratahiya. Baon natin ang ating mayayamang karanasan at karunungan upang magpatuloy sa pagganap bilang mga gurong tanggap na humahagibis na pagbabago.
Muli akong sumasang-ayon sa iyo, Binibining Ana. At sa puntong ito, bago tayo magtungo sa mas malawak pang talakayan kaugnay sa iyong mga nabanggit, magkakaroon muna tayo ng maikling gawaing naaayon sa pagdiriwang ng buwan ng wikang pambansa. Narito ang panuto. Basahin at unawaing mabuti ang pahayag na aming ipapakita. Punan ang patlang ng angkop na salita upang mabuo ng wasto ang salawikain. Bibigyan namin kayo ng 30 segundo para inyong i-type sa comment section ng ating social media platforms ang inyong mga sagot. Uulitin ko po, basahin at unawaing mabuti ang pahayag. Punan ang patlang ng angkop na salita upang mabuo ng wasto ang salawikain. So handa na ba kayo? Simulan na natin, Binibining Ana.
Salamat, Ginoong July. Para sa unang pangungusap, ang buhay ay parang patlang, minsan nasa ibabaw, minsan nasa ilalim. Ano kaya ang salitang bubuo sa salawikain na ito? Meron kayong 30 segundo upang i-type ang inyong sagot. Atin naman alamin ang tamang sagot. Ang buhay ay parang gulong, minsang nasa ibabaw, minsang nasa ilalim. Sa ating buhay, hindi laging nasa maganda at maayos tayong kalagayan. Minsan, nakakaranas din tayo ng mga pagsubok na dapat ay mapagtagumpayan natin tulad ng panahong ito.
Isang magandang salawikain nga iyan, Binibining Ana. Tayo nga ay nakararanas ng iba't ibang uri ng pagkakataon o panahon sa ating mga buhay. Sana ay nakuha ito ng tama ng ating mga manonood. Para naman sa ating ikalawang salawikain, ating ipakita na sa ating mga manonood, ang mabuting patlang ay higit na mabisa kaysa pahayag na dakila. Muli, ang mabuting patlang ay higit na mabisa kaysa pahayag na dakila. Maaari na ninyong isulat sa comment section ang inyong kasagutan. Atin nang ipakita ang tamang sagot. Ang tamang sagot ay halimbawa. Ang mabuting halimbawa ay higit na mabisa kaysa pahayag na dakila. Nararapat na ipakita sa gawa sa halip na sa salita lamang ang mabubuting bagay na ating sinasalita. Ito ay nagpapakilala sa atin kung tayo ay tapat at sinsero sa ating mga sinasabi.
Napakagandang salawikain, no? Nagtuturo to ng gabay o giya sa ating pamamaraan ng pamumuhay. At para naman sa ikatlong pangungusap, atin ang ipakita, ang hindi napagod patlang, walang hinayang magtapon. Ang hindi napagod patlang, walang hinayang magtapon. Meron tayong 30 segundo upang itype ang inyong kasagutan. Atin nang tuklasin ang tamang sagot. Ang hindi napagod magtipon, walang hinayang magtapon. Kung hindi pinaghihirapan o pinagpaguran ang pagkamit, pagtamo, pagkakaroon ng isang bagay, hindi ito panghihinayangan na mawala, masira o maubos. Kaya dapat marunong tayong mag-ingat sa ating mga pag-aari at sa mga bigay din ng iba para sa pagpapahalaga sa kanilang mga nagawang kabutihan sa atin.
Tama yan, Mang Ana. Ako ay sumasang-ayon dyan na maaari ngang mas pinahalagahan natin ang mga bagay na ating pinaghirapan. At ngayon, para sa panghuling salawikain, ating ipakita na kung gaano kataas ang patlang, gayon din ang lagapak pagbagsak. Muli, kung gaano kataas ang patlang, gayon din ang lagapak pagbagsak. Maaari na ninyong isulat sa comment section ang inyong kasagutan. Atin nang ipakita ang tamang sagot sa salawikain. Ang tamang sagot ay lipad. Kung gaano kataas ang lipad, gayon din ang lagapak pagbagsak. Sinasabi ng salawikain ito, huwag tularan ang idakila ang sarili, anuman ang inyong narating o nakamit na tagumpay o kung anuman ang mayroon ka, dahil maaring dumating ang panahon o pagkakataon na mawala o maglaho ang lahat ng ito. Maraming salamat sa sa ating mga kalahok sa maikling gawaing ito. Ngayon naman, dumako tayo sa pinakamahalagang bahagi ng ating programang DepEd Teaches, ang pakikinig ng bago at napapanahong kaalaman. Kung gayon, huwag na tayong magpatumpik-tumpik pa, Binibining Ana, maaari mo nang ipakilala ang ating mahusay na tagapanayam.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong July. Malugod naming ipinapakilala sa inyo ang ating tagapanayam ngayon na si Director Jocelyn Andaya. Siya ay nakapagtapos ng kanyang education degree at Master of Arts in Education, major in Curriculum and Instruction sa Universidad ng Pilipinas. Siya ay napagkalooban ng Australian Development Scholarship para sa kurso na Master of Educational Management and Leadership sa University of Sydney at isa rin sa mga pinangaralan ng Australia Leadership Award.
Ang ating tagapanayam ay isang tunay na mahusay na manunulat, gayon din ay isang piling tagapagsalita dahil sa malawak na kaalaman at karanasan ukol sa strategic planning, curriculum development, leadership, and management. Maglugod naming ipinakikilala sa inyo ang Director 4 ng Bureau of Curriculum Development, Director Jocelyn DR Andaya.
Magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Magandang hapon, Ginoong Kulay at Binibining Ana at sa ating lahat ng manonood dito sa DepEd Teaches. Nais ko lang batiin ang ating mga masugid na nanonood ng DepEd Teaches simula nung magsimula ito noong Disyembre. Naalala ko pa, ako ang unang tagapagdaloy ng unang episode ng DepEd Teaches. At doon ay in-explain ko din ang mga challenges ng ating curriculum. At ngayon ay nandito ulit ako para naman sa iba pang mga detalye ukol sa curriculum. Alam naman natin na sa mga panahon ngayon, kailangan natin tingnan muli ang ating curriculum at alamin kung napapanahon pa ba siya at ano ba ang ginagawa ng departamento at ng Bureau of Curriculum Development upang maging relevant pa ang ating curriculum sa ating mga kabataan. Nais kong kunin ang pagkakataong ito upang pasalamatan ang dalawang tao na tumulong sa akin upang magawa ang aking PowerPoint. Sina Dr. Isabel Victorino, ang Chief ng Curriculum Standards Development Division, at si Roel Padernal, ang Senior Education Program Specialist ng CSDD. Let me now start by again greeting everyone. Good afternoon, especially to our DepEd colleagues and to the viewers of DepEd Teaches. My presentation today will center on curriculum updates as I lead you in finding out how far off have 8 years gone after the implementation of the K-12 law. With your indulgence, allow me to walk you through the K-12 journey as we look back, take stock, and move forward with curriculum as our focus. It is said that curriculum is the totality of the learning experiences of students at school. And so we don't just refer to a paper or a set of documents we call curriculum guides as curriculum. It is everything that happens to children in school. That's why we say that there are 4 components of the curriculum: intended, implemented, tested, and attained. But if we center first on intended curriculum, o yun yung sinasabi natin ng mga curriculum guide na nakapaskil doon sa ating DepEd website, we find its legal and reason for being in RA 1053.3, specifically on Rule 2 on curriculum, where it articulates the standards and principles of the curriculum. These are all factored in as we develop the curriculum framework, which puts the child in the center of all educational endeavor. And as we implement the curriculum, we are mindful that the curriculum support system should be in place. Otherwise, the program will not fly. It will not succeed. Although our goal is to holistically develop learners with 21st century skills, the interplay of these support systems should be present and be felt in the school where all learning happens. We will need teachers capable of teaching the different learning areas. Materials, equipment, and facilities should be in place. ICT, assessment, school leadership, technical assistance, and also facilities and partnerships also are needed. Again, if these are all in place, then our chances of developing Filipinos with 21st century skills has a greater chance of succeeding. And given the right support, learners will be ready for the 4 curricular exits upon finishing basic education, ready for higher education, middle-level skills development, entrepreneurship, and employment. Alam ko na alam nating lahat yan, itong ating mga curriculum exits. And a look at the curriculum guides would reveal the presence of curriculum standards. And these standards refer to content standards, which are called benchmarks of knowledge and skills, performance standards as benchmarks of transfer of learning, and learning competency. Lahat po yan nandun po sa curriculum guide na upload sa ating website. Alam ko po na lahat ng guro mula K to grade 12 ay may kopya ng curriculum guide. Di po ba yan ang nakalagay doon sa ating curriculum guide? Meron tayong content standards, performance standards, and learning competency. Meron pa nga po yan yung sa ating coding. No? So, paano ba ginagawa ang isang curriculum? Ito po yun. Ito yung pinagdadaanan ng isang curriculum. Okay? The curriculum development process starts with needs analysis, where stakeholders from LGUs, our local government units, non-government agencies, academe, private sector, TESDA, CHED are consulted to help determine the feasibility of a proposed program. Then a review of the recent studies and researches are done to account for the presence of job opportunities. May trabaho ba pag yan ang ating in-offer na naghihintay sa ating mga bata? And others and trends and issues are considered. After that comes planning for the curriculum, where all experts and education partners are invited to participate in the planning. After that, we start with the writing of the curriculum. Yan po yung pinagdaanan ng K-12 curriculum natin. At yung mga yan ay nasa ating website. There are 2 actually documents that talk about the K-12. One is DO21 series of 2019, which is about policy guidelines on the K-12 basic education program. At ito nga nagkaroon ng pandemya, nung nakaraang taon nagsimula, we released DO12 series of 2020, which are called the most essential learning competencies. But as with any curricular reform, the K-12 program is not without challenges. The results of both national and international standardized assessments reveal no improvement in the academic performance of Filipino learners. Moreover, the emergence of copious compelling research on the nature of learners and the process of learning emphasize the need for basic education institutions to keep abreast of global future trends while addressing the changing needs and learning challenges of children. So this in turn prompted a re-examination and enhancement of the K-12 curricula in order to identify points for improvement to ultimately lift the quality of basic education. And so the Department of Education, together with the Assessment Curriculum and Technology Research Center, or what we call ACRC, has begun the process of reviewing the intended curriculum in order to verify claims about and solve existing gaps in the document. The shape of the K-12 curriculum is therefore crafted to communicate the process behind the curriculum review and revision, and more importantly, set the future direction of the K-12 program in 2022 and provide a basis for developing the shaping papers for each learning area. Now, traditionally, analytical approaches to curriculum focus on three main aspects of curriculum. At sinabi ko na po ito kanina, di po ba nagsimula tayo sa intended curriculum? O kung ano yung nakalagay sa ating curriculum guide at yun ang tinuturo, the what of teaching. Okay? Tapos meron tayong tinatawag na implemented curriculum. Paano ito ituturo sa mga bata? And the other one is on attained curriculum. Natuto ba ang mga bata? Ano ang mga natutunan nila? But my presentation this afternoon, as I already said, will focus more on the intended curriculum, as that is the Bureau of Curriculum Development's mandate. And so the intended curriculum review covered the learning competencies within the curriculum guide with special focus on K-3 learner materials and competencies. Ano po ba yung coverage ng review? Okay? Mapping of the essential and desirable learning competencies within the curriculum, and then identification of prerequisite knowledge and skills needed to prepare students for essential learning competencies, and analysis of the interconnectedness of prerequisite knowledge and skills among the learners' competencies for each subject area. I would always listen to the teacher saying, these are what's needed in the curriculum. Why? Because you are at the forefront of this. You alone actually know how the curriculum goes because you have first-hand experience and knowledge about how this is taught and how the students are able to learn from what was being taught. And so, in the review process, there were 5 tasks that we did. The first task is to classify learning competencies that were considered essential or desirable in the curriculum. Pag sinabi po nating essential learning competency, these are competencies that the students need, considered indispensable in the teaching learning process, to building skills, to equip learners for subsequent grade levels, and consequently for lifelong learning. When we say desirable, it is what may enhance education but may not be necessary in building foundational skills. So, the next task was to involve identifying prerequisites of a selection of the learning competencies classified as essential in the previous task and locating these across grade levels. Task 3 involved checking prerequisites that may have been taught in other learning areas. For example, sinasabi natin, ang learning competency, these are skills performed with varying degrees of independence. It has different degrees of difficulty and performance level. It also refers to the ability to perform activities according to the standards expected by drawing from one's knowledge, skills, and attitude. And then, kanina, sinabi ko na, ibig sabihin ng essential learning competencies. And we made a thorough analysis of the competencies as included in our curriculum guide, and we made a distinction between essential learning competencies and desirable learning competencies. So our next task was to look at the cognitive demand comparison, which examined the selection of learning competencies across subject areas and grade levels to determine the consistency of their cognitive demand. Pag sinabing low cognitive demand, it involves stating facts, following known procedures, and solving routine problems. In other words, ito yung kung meron tayong tinatawag na HOTS, higher order thinking skills, meron din tayong tinatawag na LOTS, lower order thinking skills. So, yan yung sa low cognitive demand. Sa high cognitive demand, yan yung higher order thinking skills. These demand tasks involve like making connections, analyzing information, and drawing conclusions, and so on and so forth. So the next task, the last task, was an international comparison was conducted, which compared the emphasis of different topics and levels of cognitive demand in the curriculum against internationally used measures. So we compared our cognitive demand in the Philippine K-12 versus the cognitive demand in the curricula in other countries. So those are what we did, okay? And we said that after the review, then we need to take a look at the major findings and recommendations. So, ano ba yung naging major findings and recommendations? I hope that our viewers, our listeners are able to look into this and also perhaps chat in your respective if you agree, or are there other things that you would like us to look into as we still review the curriculum. So what was the first finding? Essential learning competencies versus desirable learning competencies. What did we find out? A vast majority of the learning competencies in the current curricula were classified as essential, therefore needed. The number of identified essential learning competencies across subject areas and grade levels varied considerably. The language used to describe a learning competency in the curriculum affected its classification as essential or desirable. So it's a matter of looking at how it was phrased. Then a number of learning competencies recurred in different grade levels. Umuulit-ulit siya. So ano yung recommendation? Ang recommendation, focus on the essential understanding and conceptual messages that students need to learn and demonstrate as proof of their understanding. Okay, that's the first. Next, tiningnan natin ilan ang essential and desirable learning competencies across learning areas. And take a look at this. Essential learning areas comprise 69% of all the competencies in our curriculum, and versus desirable learning areas, which is 31% of the total number of our competencies. Okay. The next finding is nothing new to you because I have heard about it said and remarked during the pre-COVID times when I get to go around the country and speak about the curriculum, and teachers always say congested po siya. And that is also our finding. The problem of congestion was a recurring theme throughout the curriculum review process. Based on the findings, repetition of learning competencies has contributed to the congested curriculum. This is evident in English and Filipino. There was also overlapping of content seen in Araling Panlipunan and Edukasyon sa Pagpapakatao and Science and MAPE. Our recommendations: prioritize the essential LCs or learning competencies in all learning areas across grade levels which are vital in the realization of the content and performance standards, and special attention should be given to phrasing and language choice within learning competencies. So for example lang po ito, the problem of congestion was a recurring theme throughout the curriculum review process. Based on the findings, the main reason for the congested curriculum is the repetition of the same exact learning competency. So from grade 2 to grade 6, pareho lang po yung mga nakasaad po dyan, repetition of the same exact learning competencies. Pag sinabing read aloud phrases, read grade level 3 text consisting of 2-syllable words and short vowel. Pagdating sa grade 4, read aloud grade 4 level text. Pagdating sa grade 5, ganon. So this is one example of congested curriculum. Ang pumapakatlo po sa aming nakita doon sa pag-review ng curriculum ay ang tinatawag na spiral progression. At ang isa din ito, this is one of the features of our K-12 curriculum. It's also written, the features, by the way, of the K-12 curriculum are found in RA 10533. Okay, so what did we say about spiral progression? Spiral progression is observable in Com Arts, English and Filipino, Mathematics, and Science. Topics across grade levels show continuity and progression where basic or general concepts are first learned. Then more complex and sophisticated versions of these concepts are reinforced in the succeeding grades. Our recommendation is to strengthen the use of spiral approach. Some sectors would say that spiral progression does not work, and that's why they're saying we go back to the disciplinal approach. But I hope that before we go into that, let's take a look at it, at what how it is placed in the curriculum and how it is taught. There's a difference. And that's why if we are able to teach this well, I believe that spiral, and we believe that the spiral progression approach will work and will help, especially our math and English, science subjects, especially in our math and science subjects, for the learners to attain the standards. Then the other one is locating prerequisites across learning areas. Prerequisite, before you can go on to the next competency, which is a higher competency, there are prerequisite competencies. And so we'd like to find out where these prerequisites are across learning areas. So it revealed that the curriculum provides various opportunities for integration, since there are content and skills that are common in various learning areas. So in the identification of prerequisite across learning areas, an interface with the curriculum reviewers of other subjects was conducted. And really, there was an interface, especially all three subjects fall under language discipline, kagaya ng mother tongue, Filipino, and of course, English. Okay. So unpacking prerequisites and locating prerequisites across grade levels. Many of the prerequisites of the identified essential learning competencies are present in the curriculum. A challenge for the curriculum is that a number of these prerequisites are only implicitly stated. So kailangan siyang i-state clearly. Some of the prerequisites of identified essential learning competencies were found to be misplaced or missing. Some prerequisites were located at grade levels more advanced than the level at which the essential learning competency must be taught. Okay, so proper sequencing and placement of prerequisites in the curriculum guide across grade levels and learning areas should be reviewed to ensure continuity and progression of skills. Sa cognitive demand naman, Philippine curriculum appears to be more demanding than jurisdictions in the curriculum. So, I mean, in the comparison such as Australia, Canada, and Singapore, the cognitive demand of learning competencies from K to 10 in the Philippines is higher than in the USA Common Core curriculum. And the use of verbs is not a reliable indicator of a competencies level of cognitive demand. So, our recommendations, learning competencies across grade levels and learning areas should be articulated to avoid any confusion about the content to be taught and cognitive demand required. So, nagawa na po namin yon. And then we were ready for the workshop on the revision of the curriculum, but then COVID happened. And so when COVID happened, we needed to do some changes as regards our curriculum so that we are able to respond to the needs of the times. And that's why in May of 2020, we released the K-12 most essential learning competencies. It is not a departure from the K-12 curriculum. We followed the standards. These are all retained. There's focus on the attainment of 21st century skills. The codes and tag materials are retained for MAID, for merged and retained competencies, and all learning areas will still be taught. And this effort is aligned with our Sulong Edukalidad framework. These are the same competencies that we will still use in the coming school year, because results of the review or survey that we conducted for around 500,000 teachers across the country revealed that these MELCs are sufficient. But while they cover broad topics that need unpacking and tasking, there are also others that are too specific and can no longer be translated into learning objectives. And then the K-12 curriculum guide that were not included in the MELCs according to more than half of the respondents. Meaning the teacher said that there are competencies in the curriculum guide that were not included in the MELCs. And this is understandable because remember, from around 15,000 plus competencies in the K-12, we were able to trim them down to around 5,000 plus. Why? Because we just looked at the essential learning competencies. Remember those? Okay, those competencies that are needed by our learners so they can progress to the next grade level, and those are what they need in order to also communicate and for lifelong learning. So what's now the new value in the 2022 Philippine K-12 curriculum? Okay, how do we move this forward? Okay, the first thing is to support and strengthen lifelong learning, especially at this time. This is not a new direction, but the pandemic accentuates its importance and urgency. Okay, look at our current nature and structure of the labor force and the global forces also that make a demand on our education, especially on our learners. And that's why we need to be able to ensure that we give our learners the skills that they need, or we teach them the skills that they need, so that they can be employed, okay, and to strengthen their lifelong learning. What are the enhanced features of the 2022 Basic Education Curriculum? Again, there's focus on essential learning competencies premised on big ideas. We need to emphasize the mastery of foundational skills and competencies in the K-3. Okay? The learning standard shall focus only on essential learning competencies, and the development and mastery of such skills require sufficient time for acquisition and practice, thus necessitating the curriculum to streamline learning standards. Okay. When we made the curriculum, we looked at the big ideas. This is one of the features of the new or 2022 Basic Education Curriculum. What are big ideas? They consist of generalizations, principles, and key concepts important in an area of learning. In an age of information management and, in an age of infodemic, where there are just too many too much information at the learner's disposal, even at the teacher's disposal, there's a need to look into how we are able to sift through all this data that are available to us and make sure that they only get those that are important to their learning, and number two, data that are correct. Okay, so the focus is not just on pedagogy, but on utagogy, meaning in the independent self-learning. And that's what's happening right now during the pandemic, when students did not see their teachers for long periods of time, and they were just given SLMs, and they were just communicated via Viber or via cell phone. It is imperative that we teach them skills that they can do independently, that they can do documents or lessons independently. That is very important in the coming years. Okay, so highlighting student agency, that when we say highlighting student agency, we refer to all of those activities that our students need to learn to be able to participate actively in society. And they have to learn how to work independently. Okay. In these trying times, when parents are also busy making a living in this pandemic, and there are no adults around, then it's really imperative that our students become independent learners. And that's why, even as we say that teachers are really very important during this time, we need to empower our learners. We need to make sure that they are guided. Okay? And once they are guided, they can do things on their own. Okay. The other one, the other feature is strengthening the foundational skills, focus on numeracy and literacy. Literacy and numeracy are regarded as the threshold of foundational learning. This remains the focus of the teaching and learning process in the first key stage. It's important, and this has been articulated many times by Yusek, Justado, San Antonio, that the students need to read even in kindergarten, even when they are in the different grade levels, read according to their age. And so we need to strengthen literacy and numeracy and the so-called foundational skills. And then also another feature is intensifying values formation. This feature of the 2022 basic education curriculum addresses the need to complement the knowledge and skills development of learners with values, making it more holistic as it strikes a balance between competence and character. So aside from having a separate learning area as mandated by RA 11476 or the GMRC and Values Education Law, there's a systematic integration of DepEd core values and its explicit integration in the relevant topics and contents in each learning area across all grade levels. This will be further reinforced by other non-curricular programs and activities in school. And that means that ESP or edukasyon sa pagpapakatao will make way for GMRC or good manners in right conduct in elementary and values education in secondary. Now, these are all integrated. Values education will be integrated in senior high school. Another thing that we need to do is to rationalize the TVL specialization, and this entails a holistic change as demands for better assessment arises in the ASEAN qualification reference framework, and the bar is also set higher for aspiring skilled workers, especially in the advent of the fifth industrial revolution. And that's why there's a need to go back to the policy on introducing specializations in junior high school, especially in grades 9 and 10, and to revisit also the education, the EPP, TLE curriculum, EPP in grades 4 to 6, and the team is now looking, the Bureau of Curriculum Development Specialists together with our consultants and our experts from the field are looking at what specializations to offer in grades 4 to 6 that will make them also, again, productive members of the household, even in that household level or community level. Then, of course, the challenge is finding the right balance. While we give for curriculum flexibility, we need to ensure that there's system coherence, that they cannot just be flexible and therefore not adhere to standards set by the curriculum. And then conceptualization of learning, we shouldn't just be concerned about depth, lalim, kundi yung lawak din, the breadth of what should be learned. And then flexibility also and coherence as regards knowledge, skills, and competencies. Our student assessment and system evaluation should be aligned to K-12 curriculum, and these are also aligned to qualifications such as the Philippine Qualifications Framework and other assessments, such as, of course, the International Large Scales Assessment, PISA, TEAMS, and CPLM. Dimension for success in achieving an education change. Let's take a look at this. Smart policy design. Question, how has the curriculum been implemented from the student's perspective? Is the design working well for all students as they progress and transition through the system? And then inclusive stakeholder engagement. To what extent have stakeholders been involved, and how can they engage most productively to continue delivering the best possible K-12 program? Conducive environment. How are the policy and institutional environments contributing to K-12 program reaching all schools? And of course, what has been the implementation approach? I'd like also to share with everyone, okay, our DepEd Teaches viewers, that in the review of the curriculum, and even when we finally enhance the curriculum, this is not the work of one group alone, okay? Because we say that several stakeholders should be involved in the crafting of the curriculum, because this is not the curriculum alone of the Bureau of Curriculum Development, nor of the DepEd. Okay, we need to take a look at what I said, the global forces, our local forces, and make sure that what we will offer is a really relevant curriculum. And so, to end, I say that the true measure of success in any curricular program will be found in its effects on learners' thinking and actions, as well as the communities to which students belong. This is, of course, by Mr. Ross, but yes, the success or the measure of success of our curricular program will, of course, be referenced against the results of any assessments that they will take. And that is also what we want. And that's why I actually would like to appeal to our teachers to take a look at our curriculum guide, okay? And at this time, our MELCs, study it carefully and find out how you can still teach it, all of those that are there, even during the pandemic, even during crisis situation. Okay, we cannot afford to not teach those competencies, because we know that these are needed in the next grade levels, because we know that learning gains must be sustained even during the pandemic. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Maraming salamat po, Director Andaya, sa isang mayaman at komprehensibong presentasyon ng mga bagay na nakuha sa pag-review ng curriculum at mga ninanais pang hakbangin o tahakin para sa curriculum development ng ating kagawaran. Naniniwala kaming patuloy ang pagpapabuti, pagpapahusay at pagpapaunlad ng tunguhin ng ating curriculum mula sa inyong presentasyon, lalo na't hango ito sa mga otentikong datos, masusing pag-aaral at pagsangguni sa ating mga katuwang na ahensyang pampamahalaan at komunidad. Muli, ikinagagalak muli namin kayong nakasama at nakibahagi sa DepEd Teaches bilang mahusay na tagapanayam. Maraming salamat po, Director Andaya. At ngayon, para sa ating mga taga-subaybay at manonood, patuloy lamang po kayong magbahagi ng inyong mga natamong kabatiran at kaalaman sa araw na ito. Maaari niyo pong ipakita at ilagay ang inyong mga natutuhan ngayong araw sa inyong mga personal na Facebook o Twitter account. Gamitin lamang ang ating hashtag na #ISupportDepEdTeaches at #DepEdTeaches Episode 31.
At dahil tayo ay nagbukas ng bagong tema, tayo ay nangangailangang magrehistro. Makikita sa ating screen ang link. Isang beses lamang po tayo magtatala para sa buwan ng Agosto, para sa episodes 31 to 34. Inaasahan naming muli ang inyong pagsuporta at pagtunghay sa mga susunod pang talakayan dito lamang sa DepEd Teaches.
Sa ngalan ng Curriculum at Instruction Strand, patuloy nawa tayo sa ating paghahanap at pagtuklas ng mga bagong pamamaraan tungo sa pagtataguyod at pagpapaunlad ng kalidad ng ating edukasyon. Makakaasa at makikiisa kami sa inyo katuwang ang DepEd Teaches sa layuning ito. Isang maganda, ligtas at mapagpalang hapon sa ating lahat.